Hi, good night. Welcome to Conversations with Rickford Burke. This is Rickford Burke, of course, in New York. Text me, let me know where you're watching from. Thank you for joining us. Let's get thousands of people here. Just share the link. Share this link everywhere. Every one of you share this link to 30 other people. So, good night. Whether you're watching from North America, Guyana, the Caribbean, Europe, England, France, Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, North America, Canada, East Coast of the United States, West Coast of the United States. I hope you're having a good day or a good night or a good morning, whichever one it is. Share the link. Let's get a wide audience. Bacchanal in the parliament last night. PPP all confused, passing illegal bills. People jumping up and down to their seat, out of their seats. Prime Minister waving like a madman, like it's carnival. Bacchanal in the parliament. That's our topic tonight. Was the bill to gut all the accountability measures in the Natural Resource Fund lawfully passed? That's the topic for tonight. So get on all your social media platforms and share the link. Share this link in your emails, your WhatsApp groups, your Messenger groups, your Twitter account, your IG account, and of course on Facebook and on Messenger. Wherever you're watching from, share this link. Let me know you're having a good day. Text us, ask questions. We have lots of guests tonight, members of parliament. We have an economist, we have an attorney, we have a politician, we have everybody here tonight. So share the link and I'll be back in 60 seconds. All right, I'm back. Keep sharing this link. As I said, everybody share this link to somebody. Each one of you, I see what, 2,000 people here already. Each one of you share this link to 20 or 30 other persons. So tonight, I want to talk about the parliament. I want to talk about what the PPP tried to do to the nation of Guyana last night. And then I'll bring in our guests. But I want to give you an introduction. So as you know, the PPP government wanted to change the law with regard to how our sovereign wealth fund is managed. It's called the Natural Resources Fund Act of 2019. They want to change that law. That's a law that the Granger administration passed. And that law basically set out a number of accountability measures to make sure that the billions upon billions of US dollars that Guyana gets from the sale of its oil are properly managed, that there is proper accountability, and that that money is only used not to build Bar Jagday's house, not to build Pradoville, but used for the development of the country and to ensure that it's used for the benefit of all Guyanese. All Guyanese, not PPP supporters alone, all Guyanese. So the bill had a number of accountability measures, right? The bill, first of all, set up a public accountant oversight committee that was made up of a wide cross-section of the Guyanese society, everybody possible. And these organizations and every aspect of society had to get together and select one representative and send that nominee to the president, for the president to appoint them to the Public Accountability and Oversight Board Committee. You can't want anything better than that. Best practices, best practice in the international community. That's how it's done. The board, so this committee had members from all 10 regions. All 10 regions. Then you had representatives from civil society, representatives from women's organizations, youth organizations, the Transparency Institute, civil society, community-based organizations, the Bar Association, Transparency Institute, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, the Press Association, the Trade Unions Movement, Chartered Accountants Association, the Private Sector Commission, the University of Guyana, that has all the experts. The PPP said, no, this is too much people seeing what we're doing. Bar Jagday literally said, this is too much accountability, too much transparency. He said, this is a cumbersome mechanism. You would think that with the history of the PPP, they would want as much sunlight into what they're doing as possible. No, PPP said, no, we don't want that. We want to conduct this business of Guyana's oil money in secret. So their bill, which they were attempting to pass last night, removed all of these accountability measures. Seriously. They don't want representative from wide cross-section of society. Bar Jagday said that's too academic, too cumbersome, it's burdensome for the government to put so many people from such a wide cross-section of the nation to oversee Guyana's oil money. PP doesn't want that. They're thieves. They want to be able to steal the money, have it regulated by their own handpicked people. So what they wanted to do is remove this committee and replace it with a handpicked board that Orphan alone will appoint from the Private Sector Commission, 3 people in the religious community that they know, and 1 representative from what they call the professions. Well, we got about 10 million professions, so which one they're going to choose? We don't know. Pilots, doctors, lawyers, agriculturalists, geologists, engineers, public servants, civil servant, foreign policy expert. We don't know. They're just going to pick a profession. That's what they want to do with Guyana's money. And then they put a provision in there that says they have the right to immediately withdraw all the money from the funds, empty the account, probably run it into deficit and all. Then after that, they have a provision that allows them to take out at least $1.7 billion a year, Remember, there's no oversight. This is the PPP and the PPP alone. They want control of the oil money, right? And then there was a macroeconomic committee. And the macroeconomic committee was supposed to be the technical committee that would monitor what this fund is doing to make sure that there's sustainability of the fund. What do I mean by sustainability? Make sure that money is always in the bank, a rainy day fund, so that the future generations can benefit from Guyana's oil resources. So that committee, macroeconomic committee, which would be a committee of all the technical experts, would oversee the fund and advise on the technical matters of this fund. They will examine inflation, make sure that as we manage the fund, we do not induce inflation. As they manage the fund, they want to make sure that the foreign exchange rate is stable, that we have balance of payment support, that we could, in other words, we have enough money to do our capital expenses, take care of all our debt, manage the affairs of the nation, and pay our external debt as well. Then they will make sure that economic growth is stable and improving. They'll examine GDP and all those things. Then they'll look at spending. Are we spending more than we have, more than we can afford? Are we spending more money like the government is doing currently, borrowing money against the fund? That committee is supposed to advise on that and ring all the alarm bells when they see things going on whack. Then they're supposed to also monitor the public debt to make sure that they're not doing what Barajade and the PP are doing now, which is incurring debt against this fund. So technically, what the PP has done is they have borrowed as much as or more money that is in the fund. So when they draw down this money pursuant to this bill, all the money gone because it will go either in their pockets and some will go to pay down the debt. So we have no money in the fund. And if they keep borrowing, it therefore means every time we have revenue that goes into the fund from the sale of oil, it goes back to pay debt. So in other words, in the future, there'll be no money in this fund for the development of the country and to improve the lives of the people. So this macroeconomic committee was supposed to monitor and advise on all of that and put up guardrails to make sure that all these things, all of the above, which I just described, is properly monitored. And we have proper policies to make sure sustainability of the fund. PPP said, no, we don't want that. We don't need technical experts. They're going to tell us too much. We just want to close our eyes and thief out all the money. And we don't want nobody watching. Seriously. They don't want anybody to monitor what they're doing. So they're saying, all of that function we're going to transfer to the PPP minister. So listen to this. The PPP president, the fraudulent president or finale, who has already been involved in a 274 alleged fraud scheme, $1 million fraud scheme, for which he had 19 fraud charges. I was before the court. At the time he was sworn in, he's going to be the one appointed the committee to monitor what the his minister of finance is doing. And the minister of finance was also involved in a $400-something million fraud for which he was charged and placed before the court. And he challenged the validity of the charges before the court all the way to the appeals court. And every one of those courts said, no, there was enough evidence to charge him. Let him go and face the trial. Whoops, when they came into power, their supporter, the DPP, dropped all the charges. But that's a topic for another day. So the PPP attempted to pass this bill that removes all of the guardrails to protect the fund and remove the Public Accountability Oversight Committee, which is the people's ability to participate in the monitoring and management of the fund. People say, no, this fund is only for our supporters, us and our supporters. So the PPP wants to be involved in a transfer of wealth straight to themselves, all of the state wealth from them to themselves and their supporters. So that's what this whole big fight was about yesterday. And you see the massive protest outside the Parliament at the Auditorium Convention Center, and then you see the members of Parliament raising hell and creating hell in Parliament, for which we're happy. They represented the views of their constituents, both at home and the diaspora. So we are happy about the performance. They're our heroes. They are our heroes. They performed so well that they got the PPP confused. They're running past the bill illegally, all kind of confusion, who's standing on the head, waving flag, confusion, pandemonium in the Parliament, because our young MPs stood up. So we're going to be discussing this bill tonight, when it was lawful. And some other aspect, I noticed the Minister of Tourism, who's a house slave, complaining about East Coast MP Maureen Philadelphia, calling the young man who took the speaker's mace that the MPs took away, excuse me, lying on the floor with it as though it's his personal teddy bear, right? And so Maureen told him he was a house slave, appropriately so. So tonight, Onish Waldron Alikok, not sure if Alikok is still relevant there, but at least the Minister of Tourism attacked Miss Philadelphia. So we're going to get some response to that. Because I never saw her, the minister, talking about the racism. And by the way, she's my cousin, you know. That's all fine and good, but we're on different sides of the political spectrum, so she got get licks. I don't see her talking about racism. And she's saying that every time a black person supports the PPP, they're abused. Well, every time a black person criticizes the PPP, they're abused. The PPP uses the Guyana police force to go after them, like in my case, her cousin, right? She's silent on that. I don't really care. But if you're a house slave, you're a house slave, because the context in which Miss Philadelphia called this young man, Eon, whatever his name is, a house slave, is because he's protecting the racists who's perpetuating racism against his own race. That's a house slave. So that was an appropriate label. So share the link. I'll take a 60-second break, and when we come back, we'll meet our panel. Stay tuned. Keep sharing the link. Don't go anywhere. Text me, let me know where you're watching from. I'll be back in 60 seconds. Again, share the link. Keep sharing the link. We have a very important topic tonight. We have to get information out to our people here in the diaspora and back in Guyana. So keep sharing the link. So joining me right now is Member of Parliament for Region 6, Mr. Dinesh Jaiprashad. Dinesh, good night. How are you?
Good night, sir. I'm okay.
East Berbice quarantine.
Yes. Thank you for having me on the conversation tonight. And I know that tonight we will bring justice to the Guyanese people and our brothers and sisters around the world. We will definitely share with them as to what really transpired and the way the country is going under the PPP.
Thank you very much. And by the way, David Suarez, a pandit. Thank you for your service. Also joining me is his neighbor, the Member of Parliament for Region 5, Demerara. What's it?
Michael Borbis.
Huh?
Mahaika Borbis.
Mahaika Borbis. I almost said Demerara Borbis, but it's Mahaika Borbis, which is West Coast Borbis, which is from Mahaika to Fort Wellington, correct?
All the way to Ithaca.
Ithaca, sorry. I always forget that. Ithaca. We can't leave out Ithaca. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me here, Rickford. And I'm happy that I can join the conversation tonight. And particularly to speak on the topic that you would have chosen with what transpired in Parliament last evening. I think that all Guyanese must know the truth and understand the direction in which the country is heading in on a PPP installed regime.
Great, thank you. By the way, Vinceroy is a youth pastor as well. So we have a lot of men of the cloth here tonight. Then we have also joining us the economic advisor to the opposition leader, Mr. Elson Lowe. Good night, Elson. Thank you for joining us.
Good night. Good night. Always good to get an opportunity to educate the Guyanese people as to what's going on and what the dangers are that we're facing.
Great, thank you. We also have Amanza, attorney at law and member of parliament, Amanza Walton Desir. I think she's getting some problem with her internet, so she's going to join back very shortly. But I saw her on just now. So Amanza, we're waiting for you to join us, but we'll start in the meantime. Again, thank you guys all. Happy holidays. I wish all of you in 2 days a happy, prosperous new year. And I wish you all the best as you continue to be capable and efficient representatives of the people. Let's start, while we wait for Amanda, let's start with you, Dinesh. I want to, before we go to the topic of the bill, while I wait Amanza's return, I want to, I'm not sure if you saw the comments by Onish Waldron tonight, where she criticized Marine Philadelphia for, there was a video of her calling the young man who was holding the mace like a teddy bear in his hand as he lay flat on his back on the floor in the parliament, a house slave. Now, I don't see Onish Waldron and others in the PPP talking about alleged racism in the PPP. I don't see them talking about the fact that supporters of the coalition, regardless of race, some of them did not get COVID relief, some of them did not get the flood relief, while a big supporter of the PPP in your region, Desir, allegedly got $1 billion in flood relief. What's your response to people like Onish Waldron, who only see things from the PPP's perspective, but don't exercise the moral authority and judgment to condemn racism in the PPP?
Thank you again, Rickford, for having me on your program. And I must say that Minister Waldron should be ashamed of ourselves to side with a political entity that predominantly victimize and discriminate against people of her kind. It's sad that nothing was said on her behalf. She did not say anything as it relates to the amount of discrimination meted out with the thousands of public servants who were dismissed, as it relates to the COVID cash grant. More of our African brothers and sisters were discriminated. We have asked the ministers to supply to the National Assembly and in printed media the amount of persons who have received the cash grant as it relates to the COVID cash grant and their names and those individuals who are still pending the pink slip. That was not done. We have asked the minister to itemize it according to the regions as it relates to the flood relief fund, because we know that our African brothers and sisters were discriminated against more than any other ethnic composition of this country. We know that people in Region 6 who planted nothing, who lost nothing, received thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And many of our African brothers in Sanford, Lukava area of the bank, leading up to Platanka, Mara area, some individuals in the quarantine, Eversham, Manchester, Liverpool areas, and these are predominantly African areas, areas, and areas like Port Morant and Broomfield and Blackbush receive large chunks of money. In my community, there are still some people who are yet to receive, whilst other who lost nothing receive twice and thrice. So we are blatantly seeing the discrimination against one set of people, and I'm very much saddened that the Honorable Unij Waldron is not talking about these kinds of discriminatory acts against our African brothers and sisters. I am very much sad that she got some roots in the quarantine. We know we quarantine people think differently and act differently, but it bothers me. Nevertheless, I'm saying that what that guy did there with the maze, he has no authority to do that. If they are saying that the MPs were not supposed to grab it, what he did with it, he held it, and they claimed that they passed a bill. So let's go with that.
All right, thank you. Welcome to Member of Parliament and Attorney at Law Amanza Walton Desir. Thank you for joining us. Before I come to you, Amanza, I just want to give I'll come around and give everybody an opportunity to respond to Unish Waldron, because I listened to her comment and I felt so saddened, because in making those comments, she herself, Vinceroy, is demonstrating that she's a house slave, because she's not talking about the discrimination and injustice against her own people of her own race. She doesn't have to condemn the PPP, but just come out and say what it is, the truth about what's happening in the country, and she's failed to do that. But she's talking about Marine Philadelphia, who appropriately called the guy a house slave for lying on the floor of the parliament, protecting the mace that he should not have himself. Vinceroy.
Rickford, look, I'll put it this way. That guy should not have been there. Apart from that, he was very much at the wrong place at the wrong time. Unij now, I understand that she's a great liar. From the inception, she lied to the House. She lied to even the installed president. She lied to the same speaker that is telling us a whole bunch of nonsense now. And so I understand the part that she could lie well. But when hypocrisy comes into play, Rickford, I mean, she has so many different characters, and I can't understand that, this simple woman that goes down easy on a daily basis is so much of a mixed character. Unij failed to tell Guyanese that the PPP dismissed thousands of black public servants. Unij failed to condemn the act of her party, the party that she so supports, when her black brothers and sisters are left to search for a next meal, pay mortgages, and you name it, all the likes. Unij failed to do that, but Unij has the nerves to come and say to Guyanese that Maureen is in some way wrong to call that young man that was there a house slave. Rickford, Unij needs to look in the mirror very carefully and understand that she's a black woman. I really think that she doesn't know that she's a black woman. Unij, has no moral right to speak about or to speak about what Maureen did when she herself is still in a position or has not yet come to the point to realize that what she's doing silently to black people within the PPP is worse than what Maureen would have said. And although Maureen would have done it in her own rights, because I tell you the truth, I don't know where the personal assistant or whatever they called him came from. He was supposed to be probably packing Mansour's bag in his vehicle, probably checking the wheels on the vehicle to ensure it's in order for when you're ready to leave Parliament. Don't come into the house. That's not your place. The Parliament, the house, the dome belongs to people like Amanza and Dinesh and me, not whatever is his name. So I'm saying again, Maureen was in order for what she would have said, because he was at that point in time just doing what they wanted him to do, and in that being a PPP slave. That is what he was being at the time, Rickford.
And not only that, the mace is only supposed to be handled by the sergeant of arms. He was not the sergeant of arms.
Definitely, he's not
no
that.
business holding the mace. Let me come
to have it between his foot in the first place.
Right. Let me come to Amanza, and then I'll come to Elton. Amanza, we're asking for reaction to the comments by Unish Waldron just now. I'm not sure if you saw it, condemning Maureen Philadelphia for referring to the person who was lying on the floor, and by the way, who assaulted a member of parliament, pushed her down, and at Ferguson, he pushed her down, allegedly. That's what my understanding. She was condemning Maureen Philadelphia for referring to him as a house Negro, for fighting and defending the racist regime and the speaker against her constituents, basically, because she represents the East Coast. And some of her constituents are Afro-Guyanese, so she has a right to speak on behalf of her constituents, Amanza.
Rickford, I don't take Oned seriously. From the time she put her hand on the Bible and lied in the National Assembly to the people of Guyana that she was a citizen of this country when she was not, I really do not spend and expend energy taking her seriously. So that is all I will say on that.
Mr. Elsalo, you're the youth here. You're one of the youngest panelists here. So your view on what the minister said.
It's okay, Rickford. You can say I'm the youngest here. It's okay. So one of the things that's I don't
want to diminish your maturity. You're young, but you're very mature.
Well, youth and experience, they don't have to be opposite ends of things. One of the things that's not, I think, well known is that even while protesting outside of the parliament, the new leader of the PNCR was called a racist slur that I won't repeat here. And so, a lot of things that were very concerning kind of came out on that day. And it's sad to see that in the process of protesting for his rights, he was abused in that way. But
he was called the N-word. We heard it on the video, the N-word, by a PPP supporter.
So it's sad to see that sort of thing. But what I'd say is that I try to stick to the point, and I think that there's a lot that's been done in the past year or so to distract from the bill and to distract from the fact that they've passed or attempted to pass one of the worst and most dangerous pieces of legislation in the history of the country. So I try not to allow too many of these side narratives to take over. Oh, people are rowdy, this, that. I don't have a particular interest in that. I have a particular interest in why the Extractive Industry Transparency Institute representative was removed. The person who, of all of the people in that entire bill, would have been most likely to spot when there was a problem with Guyana's oil and gas revenues, when there's a problem with how they're being used, and when there's a problem concerning corruption in the bill. So the most important mechanisms to control the bill were removed. So I want to talk about that. And all these side narratives which try to distract us, I don't know that I'm particularly interested in them, because I know that the PUP doesn't want to answer the hard questions that we have to ask them.
Thank you. Great. Thanks. And keep sharing the link, everybody. I know we have a powerful discussion on the way here. I see there are over 8,000 people watching. All 8,000 of you, share the link to 20 or 30 other persons. Let's get this message out. I want to start with you, Amanza. You're the attorney here. Tell us, what are the differences in the bill passed in 2019 by the APNU+AFC Granger administration and the bill that the PP attempted to pass, but which was not lawfully passed yesterday?
Thank you, Rickford. I'll try to not riddle it down with legalese and keep it as straightforward so that every man and woman listening would be able to understand exactly what it is that we're saying. What the PPP attempted to pilot through the National Assembly yesterday is a piece of legislation to repeal the 2019 Natural Resources Fund Act that was set up or that was assented to in 2019 by President David Granger. What is striking to me is that there is a removal of all of the safeguards that were built into the previous legislation. What it basically means is that it clears the way for just a grand heist and a theft of the patrimony of the people of Guyana. We have to set the context in understanding that the Sovereign Wealth Fund is intended to manage, as it were, the proceeds from the sale of oil and to manage the intergenerational wealth, looking at things like investment. How do we make sure that the present and future generations can benefit from the oil resource? And so naturally, you would have in legislation built-in safeguards to ensure that there is not ad hoc spending, that the government is not given carte blanche to do with the monies as they would want. Those were the safeguards that were built into the 2019 legislation. What we have is a far more inferior document, which basically puts the power into the hands of the president, which basically puts the power into the hands of who I call a very troublesome trifecta: the president, the vice president, and the minister of finance. And they will be at their discretion operating the fund. That is the basics of what is happening. Now, you mentioned a couple of other committees, and I'm sure my other colleagues, Elson in particular, will have some more detail to add to this. But for me, the two concerning things that I saw were, one, the removal of the oversight by the civil society organizations. The PPPC has attempted to justify this removal by saying that it was unwieldy to have a 22-man panel administer this fund. What I do not see, however, is a willingness to even discuss how do you narrow it down. So, for example, you have 10 regional reps, one from each region. Let's discuss how we narrow that down. What about if we have the local government commission, for example, represent that interest? I'm not saying that that is ideal, but I'm saying that were the intentions of the PPP pure, and did they intend to allow Guyanese people to oversee their money? This would have been the level of discourse that we should have been having. And this is why we were insisting that this bill should go to a select committee, because of the need for wide and varied consultations. They have done away completely with that. What they have instead put is a watered down provision that says civil society organizations will provide non-governmental oversight. What is non-governmental oversight? Exactly what does that mean? The previous bill tasked this committee with 4 clear mandates, including independent assessment of the government's performance, including assessing whether they were managing the fund in the best interests of Guyanese. That has been done away with. And it is important for the people of Guyana to understand what this means. If I do not intend to not be held accountable, if I intend not to be held accountable, these are the things that I would do. So you're saying to Guyanese, okay, look, don't put these safeguards, but you can trust us. This is basically what the PPPC is asking. The other part that troubles me greatly, Rickford, is the removal of this macroeconomic committee. This is an important safeguard to make sure that we are not handling the fund in a manner that would have negative impact on the performance of our economy. That has been removed. And so there is no criteria, there is no requirement for the government to consider what are the fiscally sustainable amounts to be drawn off of the fund, what is the economically sustainable amounts to be drawn off. All they are basically putting in place is ceilings. The most troubling for me, however, is clause 17 of that bill, which says that upon signing into law, the government is authorized to withdraw 100% of the proceeds in the Natural Resources Fund. 100%. It means that the day that that law is signed into effect, the next day, the NRF, the Natural Resources Fund, which is the money of the people of Guyana, is gone. And so I'm sure during the course of the discussion, we will come to what happened in the National Assembly. We will come to why it has to happen, but it had to happen. But those are, for me, the key elements that I'm deeply, deeply concerned about. Of course, that whole governance structure has been replaced with a hand-picked 5-man team that will be appointed by the president. And those of us who know and understand, when you are appointed, the power of appointment has inherent in it the power to fire. It therefore means that these men and women are going to be serving at the pleasure of the president and will therefore have to toe the line. But Rickford, let me say this to all of them who are salivating over assuming these positions. Understand that from now on, I mean, the bill isn't passed lawfully, but when it is, if it is passed in that iteration, you, your family, your staff, everyone connected to you will be now on a watch list. Your financial transactions are going to be monitored and scrutinized by the international community. Understand that once you're involved in the management of a nation's sovereign wealth fund, that is the level of scrutiny that you will be subjected to.
It's especially in the United States.
Especially from the United States. And the PPP civic administration must understand that if they pass a bill that is widely criticized in this manner, it will have implications for investors, because no investor will want to come, particularly banks and financial institutions, will want to come and be a part of any of the PPP's jiggery-pokery. And so because the PPP has over-leveraged themselves, because they have borrowed this country into a hole, we see the depths of desperation that they went to last night to get it passed. But we maintain that the bill has not been legally passed, and I'm sure we will come to that during the course of the discussion. I do not want to hog the discourse, so I will end there now.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for that introductory summary that really lays out for the people. Vinceroy, let me go to you. One of the main planks of this bill was the Oversight Committee, which is called the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee, that derived, the membership derived from a wide cross-section of the Guyanese society. Like I outlined, you have women's organizations, community organizations, the University of Guyana, the Press Association, the Bar Association, the youth organizations, everybody, the Chartered Accountants, the Extractive Industries representative, and the government, Barjaveo in particular, said this is too cumbersome. He doesn't want so many people involved in the management of this fund. He actually said that those people are not elected. His government is elected. And so they have the right to withdraw all of the money at one time and do whatever they want without oversight. What does it say for a government that is telling the country that civil society, that everybody from the society should not have a representative on a committee that monitors this fund?
Rickford, I'll put it this way. With the oversight committee in place, that is from the previous bill as it were, I think that was the best way that our natural resources fund could have been managed. I say that because when you look at first the regions, all regions had a representative. I think Amanza mentioned that earlier. The regions understood, the representative from the region would understand what is the needs of the region, and they would understand how or what direction the withdrawal should go with, and what should be done for the regions. Apart from the regional oversight members from the regions, you had religious organizations, from the trade unions, you had from women's arm, you had from youth arm. Now, all of them understands clearly what those sector of society would need. And so when they sit around the table, they would know how to properly decide, plan, and execute for in representation of the people. And for a government to say now, install as they are, that we don't need all these people, we just want 5 persons coming from a board or comprising a board, and we're going to look at, let the 5 decide what should be done. Before I want to talk about the 5 firstly. The 5 persons that will be handpicked by the president, those persons will be loyal to the president. We don't need to run around the schoolyard to try to find out or understand that. If you employed me, somewhere along the line, I have some amount of loyalty to you. And so immediately we're seeing there that Jagdeo and his cabal are simply saying to the nation that we're setting up this body so as to enable our stealing, and so as to make sure that what we want to do can be done easily, because we have the people that we want to get it done in the right place. And so immediately we see there that all the necessary checks and balances, the necessary transparency that we would have gotten from the 22 member committee, the accountability that we would have gotten from the 22 member committee, all of that has been completely erased. And now this small board of directors, as they call it, would be responsible for the sole management of our fund, and whatever is being placed in it and withdrawn from it, withdrawn from it. And so I believe it is the PPP saying clearly through Barjagdio that, listen, we're setting this up so that we can enable the smooth enrichment of our people, and we can enable our friends and cronies to get what they want, because those who we put there will be able to do just that for us when they sit to decide how and when they spend these monies.
Thanks, Vinceroy. Elson, you're the economist here. The Amanza spoke about the macroeconomic committee and the importance of it, because they're the technical experts that will have to guide the fund, as well as guide the policymakers and the oversight committee with regard to the sustainability of the fund and how they should act and manage the fund. Now, the macroeconomic committee should have, under the Granger administration law, would have been appointed by the Minister of Finance after he would have received nominees from himself, the Private Sector Commission, the Leader of the Opposition, the Cabinet, the Bank, and the Bank of Guyana. So those are the technical experts. And again, just like the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee, it was broad-based, and it includes a wide cross-section of the representatives of a wide cross-section of the society. And the whole concept in the way the Granger administration bill was designed is to, at every level, have the people participate in the management of the affairs of the oil resources, or the money that accrued from the oil resources. Now, the responsibility of this fund was to analyze things like analyze future spending, withdrawals from the fund, recommend to the Ministry of Finance the sustainable amount for them to withdraw, monitor inflation, monitor the exchange rate to make sure it's not running away, ensure balance of payment support, analyze and examine economic growth, especially with regard to manufacturing and agriculture, the composition of public spending, the public debt, the sustainability of spending as relates to revenue. So, and that's a major technical issue. You can't, which is what the PP is allowing themselves to do now. You can't raid the fund, empty the fund, without understanding what comes in or leaving anything in the fund to make sure that there's money there to continue the development of the country and also for posterity, right? They're undermining the patrimony of the nation. What is your view with regard to the necessity of this technical committee? And how do you view the fact that the PP has removed this committee from their bill and placed all of this authority with the Minister of Finance, technically with Bajade? Bajade making all the decisions because we know he's the Minister of Finance. He's the Minister of Finance, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Development, Minister of Planning, Minister of everything, right? What is your view? What's your expert view on, one, the necessity of this technical committee and how damaging it would be to the fund and the welfare of the people if it doesn't exist and all of this power is vested in one person?
Thank you, Rickford. Listen, I've heard some people express the sentiment, we're just trying to get access to the oil funds to develop the country, let them go. And I think that it's, we don't want to delve into technical things to the point that people don't really understand the importance. So let me kind of help people to see it from in a different way. From the beginning of time when it comes to oil, countries that have oil have always kind of believed the same things, which are troubling. One is that oil will never run out. Two is that the oil price will never fall. And three is that they'll be able to manage their spending, and so things will never get out of hand. In many countries all over the world, this is not proven to be the case, which is why sovereign wealth funds really became such a dominant thing when it comes to oil and gas. There are some serious risks, and we have to look at the experiences of other countries that come from not having a sovereign wealth fund or not having a serious one with strong provisions like the macroeconomic committee, which the goal of that committee being to monitor and to evaluate to ensure we avoid these risks. If you look at the most famous probably example of Venezuela, I'm sure that at various points in time, Chavez and Maduro said, oh, I wish I could moderate my spending. I wish I could cut back for the long term. But the point being, it's very difficult to do those things once you've locked in commitments, spending commitments to various interest groups. A funny thing that our viewers may not know is that in 2021, there were 63 strikes at Gaisuco. 63 strikes. You think there's going to be less strikes or more strikes once the Gaisuco workers realize how much money is flowing into the country? Are you going to be able to cut back when you need to cut back? That's a constituency that was just handed out $250,000, to workers that were paid their severance, that have left the industry. And that seemingly was for the not a particularly strong reason, or just as a thank you. Are there going to be thank yous like that on and on and on as we get more and more funds in? And is this going to cause a problem for the treasury? The macroeconomic committee is supposed to evaluate these types of things to ensure that we don't run the serious risks. Now, what are some of these serious risks, and why are they so troubling and so frightening? The first is you can run up huge amounts of debt when you have oil coming in, huge amounts of debt. And when the oil price falls, as it inevitably always does, you cannot be able to pay those debts. And so the PUP has put in place a mechanism that is allowing them to withdraw almost all of what is earned for a substantial period of time, so they can rack up massive debts. You're talking tens of billions of US of debts they can rack up. But if we have a sharp drop in the oil price, will they be able to pay back those debts? And will that now cause a national economic crisis that can shut down the entire economy? That's something that has happened frequently in other countries. Another thing is when you don't have a macroeconomic committee like we currently have, unless they change it in this bill, you don't have people evaluating inflation, rising prices. Now, every Guyanese has experienced rising prices this year. It was a particularly bad year, all over the world, and food prices were through the roof. I think up like 14%. The cost of living was very, very high. That is the tip of the iceberg. If you dump huge amounts of money into this economy too quickly, it can go through the roof. Whereas one example in Venezuela is that you're standing at the back of a shopping line, and by the time you get to the counter to pay, the price for everything that you have in your shopping cart has changed. It's that bad, right? And so we don't want that kind of an environment in Guyana, which can totally wreck our economy. And as a result, you've seen about 6 million people flee Venezuela. Many of them have come to Guyana, which is almost a quarter of the entire population. It could wreck the entire economy. And so the PPP is playing a very, very dangerous game by removing this type of oversight. First, the macroeconomic committee with the technical people to look at this. But second, the many representatives on the Public Accountability Committee who would also be able to evaluate from various sectors of society how our spending is performing and how our fund as a whole is having, what kind of impact our fund is having on our country and our economy as a whole. So I think that this is incredibly dangerous. I think we have to look at historical precedent. I think we have to not be arrogant when it comes to our oil revenues and understand that oil is very volatile. Even within the last year, you've seen oil, year and a half, you've seen oil prices into negative territory, negative prices. Now they're up at $70. They could be down again tomorrow. You've seen some substantial swings. If oil goes to zero again, and we have these massive debts, will we be able to afford them? Will we have to tax citizens to the extent that the entire economy slows down and everyone is suffering? This is exactly what has happened in other countries. What happened in Venezuela is that because the Saudis decided they wanted the oil price to be low, or at least that's the allegation, the Venezuelan budget could not balance. So they ended up borrowing more to try and keep things going because they had all of these commitments that they had to pay, and they borrowed more and more until they borrowed from the Chinese to the point the Chinese stopped lending them. They started borrowing from my old firm, Goldman Sachs, to the point that they were paying enormous interest rates, which made the problem worse. And by the time, a couple of years passed, the economy was wrecked. It was so bad that is the worst economic decline outside of an actual war zone in the history of the world. And so this is a very dangerous game that's being played. This law is there for a reason. This is something that exists. These types of controls exist in other countries, and they're there so that we prevent this type of really concerning thing from happening. I know that people will say, oh, we can control the spending, we will not overspend. But I don't believe that. I know that Guy Suko is going to protest from now until the end of time to keep getting wage increases. And I know they can't really tell them no, because Guy Suko workers will know the money is there. Everybody will know the money is there. That's what happens in these circumstances. People know you have money. People will ask for the money and protest and keep noise, and you won't be able to say no. And so without the safeguards, the whole thing becomes a runaway train, which is exactly what happened in Venezuela. And if you have the bad luck of having oil prices fall, the whole thing falls apart in no time. So we put in place the coalition strong safeguards for a reason, looking at history, looking at the experiences of other countries, including the country right next door, so that we don't go down that path. But it seems that that's the path the PPP wants to go down. So we're just going to have to fight them all the way through and see how it goes.
Thank you, Elson. Dinesh, I want to follow up on something. I know you're not an economist, but we remember you're a legislator. I want to follow up on something Elson said. He pointed exactly to the Venezuelan situation, especially with regard to the debt and how much they borrowed. We are in the same situation. As a matter of fact, Winston Jordan, who's an expert on this issue, has said that the government has already borrowed more money than is currently in the fund. That's why they put that provision in there that they could withdraw all of the money one time, currently. Now, also he spoke about the guardrails that are in the bill. Already we see they're paying Gaisuko $250,000 to every person who was terminated and already got their severance. So this is like the third severance. But they also telling public servants, we can't afford to pay you, right? We can only give you a 7%, while they're giving Gaisuko workers, their supporters, $250,000. Also, we see them borrowing a lot from China. So we see basically a footprint of Venezuela in the terms of the policies of the PPP and their spending habits. As a member of parliament, a legislator, somebody who has to vote on this legislation, what is your view with regard to the PPP's lack of interest in the fiscal sustainability of this fund by removing all of the guardrails and all of the, not only the macroeconomic monitoring of the fund, but also the public accountability aspect of the funds? So they're spending recklessly, withdrawing recklessly, while they also remove all the safeguards for accountability.
Rickford, I want to say that there is more than what we are seeing happening now. A lot of, Elson made mention about a lot of person not knowing what really this new act will bring to us. We are seeing that under the PPP, we had Protocol 1, Protocol 2. This act now that the PPP has tabled in Parliament will cause us to lose our resources more than any other time in this country. I want to say that we see how the PPP is peculiar in sharing out monies to their support base. We know the cash grant, we know the flood relief, we know the Gaisuku saga. But this natural resource fund is far more than our imagination. We have never had this amount of wealth before. And this money that is coming to us here is not PPP and APNU+AFC money. We got to get this right. This money belongs to the people of this country. Our ancestors came here, we are here, and the future generation to come. All that we are having here now, this money belongs to all of us. This has nothing to do with race and religion and ethnicity and social status and so. This has to do with the longevity of the good life that we are expected to have in Guyana. Putting this oil in the hands of 5 individuals will make Guyana like a Venezuela. So there are a lot of persons who are on social media talking a lot of crap that, you know, this bill will give us so much money and you know, leave the people to spend the money and draw the money. But this is not the PPP money. This is not APNU money. But thanks to David Arthur Granger and the APNU+AFC, they had a system whereby the Act of 2019, as it relates to the Natural Resource Fund, put a better body, or oversight body, to manage this fund, this revenue, this money that will be coming to us. Now the PPP says, no, 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 this is big story. We do not want 22% to manage this money, to have 22% to agree on a project and whatever is too long. We want this money so that the honorable can go in tomorrow and say, hey, Guyana, we need 10 billion for this and we need so much for that. You know, this is not the way how we are to manage this fund. If you are dealing with other funds and so that is okay, you deal with that. But this is the future of our country. We do not want, within a couple years, few individuals squander out the money that belongs to our generation to come in the future. No, we do not want that. So a lot of person in Guyana and around the world talking a lot of nonsense as it relates to this bill. But I'm happy that you are bringing this information to the people so that they will understand that this is more than the top talk that you have in the communities and the little social media. And so this is our life. This is our survival. This is the happiness of our children, their future, their education, their jobs. Is more than what is happening here in front of us now. And well, as we go on, we will talk more as to what really happened in Parliament.
Yes, and I want to come to that right now. Now, Amanza, the commotion in Parliament occurred because the PPP was acting like if this money belongs to them, right? They're the government and they must be able to do what it is, whatever they want with the money. So you had a wide cross-section of persons condemning the bill. The media, Starbuck News, Kaitra News, Village Voice newspapers, the diaspora, civil society organizations, community organizations, individuals. I mean, I have never seen unity in Guyana within the recent time as there was unity in opposition for this bill. And all members of parliament wanted, I noticed the chief whip from the opposition rose at the commencement of the sitting, asking if the bill could have been sent to a special select committee so that the committee can then hear the views of the widest possible cross-section of the people and be guided by them. And the PPP refused to do that. They just wanted to bulldoze this bill through the parliament and tell us what happened.
Rickford, look, the PPPC, I think last evening, exhibited its complete desperation. As you have noted, there was widespread condemnation of this bill and a request from all quarters of society asking for more time. Our request was very simple. Could you put this bill to a select committee so that we can make an informed consultative process? The speaker was not minded to so do. I want to point out to the people of Guyana, Rickford, that the PPP has put out a narrative out there that, oh, there is no legislation for them to access the fund. It is a bold-faced lie. There is legislation in place in the form of the 2019 Natural Resources Fund. What they did not want to do was to activate that bill because of the oversight that it came with. And so they were trying to ram this vile piece of legislation down the throats of Guyanese using their one-seat majority. Well, we were not going to have it. And let me be very, very clear for all those who believe that we ought to be ashamed of our conduct last evening. Unequivocally, we are not ashamed. If standing up and defending the patrimony of this nation, if standing up in defense for the rights of the people of Guyana who put us in the National Assembly is something that we have to apologize for, then you are sadly mistaken. So I would suggest that the people who are wasting their energy to hurl insults and to condemn our actions, keep that energy and utilize it. Go read the bills, go understand the differences between the two pieces of legislation, and understand that your children and their children will thank you for investing that time. We have nothing to be apologetic about.
Amen.
Let me make it very, very clear. And like I've said earlier,
Right. Amen to that.
the PPP and their acolytes will not define us. We've been branded thugs, we've been branded hooligans, we've been branded terrorists, then so be it. So be it. They must understand that this is not a long time. We don't business where you call we. We will do what we have to do to protect and defend the interests of Guyanese, including the very PPPC supporters who would call us all of the slurs, because trust me, in another year, the cry is going to be different. They do not even understand that whilst they throw the vilest insults at us, we are fighting for them, but it will become very clear very soon. And so we have no apologies to make to not a boy. Let me make that very, very clear from the outset. The removal of the mace from the National Assembly in parliamentary democracies has been a long-standing form of protest. It is the ultimate form of protest. And so for the conveniently outraged, I would want to remind them that Chet Jagan did this way before Annette Ferguson. So keep your selective outrage and shove it. I have lost patience with the foolishness. I have lost patience with the foolishness. I have lost patience with the speaker. The speaker is an embarrassment to parliamentary democracy. And I have no bones about saying it. And I know he has threatened to punish us, but so be it. What I do know is that we are standing in solidarity with all of the MPs that did what they did. Annette, Vinceroy, Amanza, whatever they wish to do. We're not going to be apologizing for defending interests and the intergenerational benefit of Guyanese. No way. So let's make that very, very clear. We have to understand that the removal of the mace is the ultimate form of the people's protest. The mace is the symbol of the people's authority in the National Assembly. And its removal says that we are operating without that authority. So this is not a question of teeth in the mace. So the PPP acolytes need to take several seats. We have done what we need to do, and the bill is now illegally passed. And there's no if or but about it. And what the PPPC needs to be focusing is the picture of desperation that they present. To have a speaker go for a toy mace is the best way I could put it, donated by the PSC, the Private Sector Commission, for the convening of mock parliament when they have youth parliament, to force a bill down the throat of the... Are we serious? And they want...
It sounds like a joke. Seriously, it sounds like a joke.
Call us all kinds of names. The PPP have demonstrated themselves to be the biggest jokes, the biggest jokers in all of this. And they want to call us all the bully and so on. When Jill mashed up the parliament, they weren't bullying.
Assaulted a police officer.
When he assaulted the police in the parliament, it wasn't bullying. When Priya had a rape in the parliament, and for those who would want to come to say, oh, two wrongs don't make a right, take several seats. Because how long can a people be law-abiding, follow the law, try to uphold all the standards of decency in the National Assembly, and sit down and be marginalized and cast aside? You don't matter. You are a second-class citizen. You will have your say, but we will have their way. Our way is their common theme. What were we supposed to do? Sit down and allow this atrocity to be meted out on the people of Guyana? Therefore, I have no time for the foolishness. I have no time for the foolishness. And I want to say to my Guyanese brothers and sisters that you have to understand you have a role to play in this as well. Because we have spoken up, we have brought you the knowledge, we have brought you the information. You have to act too. We are here. We are standing shoulder to shoulder with you. We have taken the fight to the National Assembly, and we are willing to support you. But you must now take a stand because this is your money. I often hearken to the Norwegian model. Norway got 5 million people, and each citizen is worth, I use it loosely, 200,000 US dollars. That is what each citizen is entitled to because of the way that they have managed that fund. We got 700,000. Let me say a 2 million if you counting everybody in the diaspora. My God, can we not, for once, do something right? For once. What is wrong with us as a nation, as a people? The PPP supporters are hurling the worst racial slurs, not understanding that it is their children that will suffer tomorrow. That when crime spirals out of control, that it is their children and our children that are going to be the victims of that. But we basically cussing Matty about who's this and who's that, distracted with foolishness while the treasury is being pillaged and plundered. I want to make this point. The PPPC has already removed all of the safeguards for the procurement system. Plenty money, plus no procurement oversight in terms of projects and infrastructural development. Oh my word. Recipe for corruption. But I and my colleagues on this call, we have sounded the alarm. We have done our part, and we will continue to do our part. But the people of Guyana have to rise up, demand an end to this atrocity. This is not Barrett from the OI, not here from Ali. This patrimony belongs to the people of Guyana, irrespective of creed, irrespective of race, irrespective of their political affiliation. And if you do not stand up and defend it now, you will reap the bitter harvest of your inaction.
Thank you. And just before I throw it over to the other panelists, Amanza, I wanted to go over, based on parliamentary rules, the mace has to be in place for any business to be conducted. And second, members have to be seated for the vote to be counted. None of that was present during the time of this bill. Even the speaker acknowledged that. As a matter of fact, the speaker admitted today, he held a press conference and he inadvertently admitted that the bill was unlawfully passed. He said, quote, that the mace could not be found, the parliamentary mace could not be found, so he used a replica of that mace and proceeded with the business and to pass the bill. That's number one. So he himself admitted it's a toy. And as you said, it was donated to the parliament for mock parliament. So the man bring an imitation mace to serious business of the parliament. And then second, he said almost all of the government MPs were seated. But yet still he counted their votes. And we know that when James Bond, when he was in parliament, he was not seated. During the PPP's government, they did not count his vote. Matter of fact, they raised it with the speaker and ensured that his vote was not counted. So are we seeing two standards here? You must count their vote if they don't comply with the rules, but you mustn't count the AFC votes. And second, the man admitted that it was a toy mace. I don't understand what speaker is going to diminish the importance of the parliamentary session by bringing into the house a toy to pretend it's a mace, to pretend the symbol of the people is present, to proceed with the business. The speaker has admitted that he's a clown.
Like I said earlier, I have lost every shred of respect that I have for the speaker. Can you imagine to be so desperate to ignore the cries of Guyanese that you would take a toy mace, put it in place, and pretend to pass a piece of legislation? We will be writing, we will be communicating to all and sundry that this bill has not been legally passed. We will be putting the international community on notice that this bill was not legally passed. because the parliamentary protocols were not observed. And, you know, to hear the speaker lie, to say that he was trying to contact the chief whip of the opposition, to hear him lie is appalling. Mansour Nadir needs to resign with immediate effect. He has disgraced the position of speaker. Can you imagine? That is the depth of reverence that these people have for the law. I want to make it clear that the removal of the mace is a lawful form of protest in the National Assembly. We did not break the law. Let me make that pellucid. Who broke the law is the speaker. To pretend that a most significant symbol could just be replaced. He could have bring a ruler then and bless it as a mace, innit? They need to take several seats. Them and their collective outrage. Let me tell you, man, I'm in a different place with this. And like I made a post on Facebook earlier, you don't define me, I define me.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a long line of ancestors that had to fight for their freedom. And I'm willing to fight for the freedom of the next generation. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they could say what they want. We are past caring how they characterize us. We know that we are on the side of right. We don't business if you brand us hooligans. We don't business if you brand us thugs. The Speaker of the National Assembly dared to characterize us as terrorists. For what? Standing up to protect the interests of Guyanese that you would so willingly prostitute at the feet of your political masters? Hey, listen.
Thanks, Amanda. Very passionately stated. Vinceroy, I want to follow up on what Amanda just said. I mean, the fact that the PPP, the party in Guyana that has committed acts of terrorism throughout history, bombed the San Chapman boat, burnt homes of black people throughout the country, killed black people throughout the country, formed death squads that killed hundreds of African Guyanese, shot and killed a political activist while he was campaigning in the last election, have been harassing persons who don't support them, whether Indians or of blacks or Indians or Amerindians or not. He has labeled the MPs terrorists. And also, you had Gail Teixeira, a known racist, who pretends that she's some sort of Caucasian from Europe. And Ashley Singh calling black female MPs thugs, which is a racist slur. When you had the PPP, as Amanza said earlier, breaking up the parliament in the last session sitting, when they were in opposition, you had members of parliament assaulting police officers in the parliament, then argue that they have immunity. You had Priya Manichan with no class screaming rape. Why she said that? Because the police officers were black that were restraining her, because that's their mentality in the PPP, that every time black people confront them on something, they ought to criminalize them. And then you had Irfan Ali leading a bunch of thugs at the Pegasus, trying to kill Dr. Cummins, overturn her car. And they have the gall to call members of parliament thugs. I mean, does the PPP really want to go down the road of name calling terrorism when they have committed terrorism? And as a black member of parliament that yesterday had to stand up and defend the rights of some of the female members of parliament from the opposition, one of whom was assaulted and thrown to the ground. What is your view of Mansour Nadir, the speaker, referring to you as a terrorist and referring to your female colleagues as thugs?
Rickford, thanks. I'll tell you this. Mansour Nadir has sunken to the lowest state that any speaker across this Caribbean or that I would have read and heard about has ever gone to. Mansour failed to realize that when he's speaking about videos and he has record to prove that we have records to prove that he was part of the mob that was in front of the Pegasus Hotel and almost overturned Dr. Cummins' vehicle. Mansour dare this morning to say that we, and I want to be a bit personal now, Rickford, that I am a terrorist, that I am a thug, that I am a hooligan. Rickford, if defending the over 200,000 people, and by extension Guyanese, and the Natural Resources Fund deem us to be terrorists with our behavior last night, or deem me to be that, so let it be. Because I did that not because what I did not because I wanted to, but because it was necessary for not only me and my family and my child, but for the thousands, hundreds of thousands of Guyanese out there and their children to come who will have to benefit from that Natural Resources Fund. And so Mansour, in his slow and whatever way he wants to put it, to name us thugs and all of that, should first look in the mirror and understands that he is more of a thug, hooligan, and terrorist when they try to hurriedly pass on Guyanese that piece of legislation that will terrorize Guyanese for the rest of their lives, because they will then live in poverty and hardship, difficulty in this country because of their action. And you know, Mansour sat there like as if he had a whip hanging over his head. But I want to believe physically there was a whip that Jagdio told him, listen, if you don't go back in there and get this thing done with, when you come out, it's trouble. So Mansour Rickford, I see as, you know, what's her name? Onage was speaking about how Maureen spoke about the personal assistant. The personal assistant. Mansour is another PPP slave. Mansour, when you look at Mansour and his operation, Mansour has not been independent. He has not been in any way fair as Speaker of the National Assembly at one point. He has always been biased. He has always been lenient to one side of the house, and he takes it to be, it's at his pleasure to serve the PPP with whatever he does. I'll give you one example. It was the Minister of Finance, installed as he is, who was speaking yesterday on the floor. I think that was to the local content bill, when he made reference to not knowing who really is the leader of the opposition. And then he spoke about Aubrey Norton and Mansour. You know, he interjected and said that Comrade Norton is not there to defend himself, and so he should not. But then with the same breath, Mansour followed up to say, but you really don't know who really is. So he made a joke out of it and took his eyes to pass both the leader of the opposition, Joseph Harmon, and the leader of the People's National Congress. And when when other members stand or sit and make mention make critical mention of things with regards to the PPP, Mansour is the first to shut them down. And a speaker who is very much, Mansour has gone to the lowest state, Rickford. And Mansour need to, I think, resign, as Amanza rightfully said, because with Mansour calling us thugs and hooligans and terrorists, I'm telling you, Mansour need to be prepared for these thugs, hooligans, and terrorists for the rest of his term sitting as Speaker of the National Assembly. And that would not be for too long, Rickford. It would not be for too long. And so Mansour need to take note of that. And then to say that he's threatening to say they will be punished. Mansour need to understand, as Amanza rightfully said, that removing the mace is a legal form of protest. And it is not like if it happened the first time in our National Assembly. It has happened before. And probably need to go and read some of the history of our parliament and understand what really happened. And then you also need to look at parliaments in the international arena and understand how people protest at the level of when something is about to happen that will affect the nation. Understand how those members who are representatives of the people would normally protest and the levels they will take it to. And so Mansour has no right to speak to us about who is hogs, hooligans and thugs and terrorists. When Priya spoke about rape and all of that in the parliament, look, Rickford, you you said it just right. If it was 5 or 4 Indian, and I'll say this without apology, officers standing around Priya, she would never said anything about rape and all of that. But the people in the PPP have no damn respect for black people. That is the bottom line of it. They have gone and I tell you, they crossed the line when it comes to black people. Not only those in the National Assembly, but throughout the length and breadth of the country. And even if you're living in America, Rickford, once you're black, they have no regards for you. And that is why I get upset with people like Onage, who sits as slaves in the PPP and do just what they say, even if they plan and execute, as a matter of fact, killing of black people, punishment of black people, and she still come to smile in front of us. And the others like Joseph Hamilton and Mark Phillips, these guys are ridiculously crazy when they come to smile in front of us and say that they want to speak about one Guyana when black people are trampled upon and treated as a last class of people in this country. Rickford, I think that Guyanese need to look at this and look at it very seriously. And we need to unite, rise up, and begin to push back against the PPP. Because if we don't push back now, I believe it is an opportune time that we together join hands and hearts and push back against the PPP. Because if we don't do it now, tomorrow might be too late. And when I say this, Rickford, I'm not saying to people that we're going to go out there with guns and sticks and all of that. We're going to do whatever is necessary as people of this nation and utilize people's power if it calls for us to shut this country down and the National Assembly to the extent that no, if we can't go there, nobody goes there. That is the level I think that we should go to, because the PPP has gone to a level whereby they see black people as just floor mats, and they don't think that we deserve equal opportunities as every other Guyanese deserves. And so I believe at this point, as the new year dawns, we need to take a different approach to the PPPC, particularly Jagdio, Afanali, and the others there in the leadership.
Thanks. Well said.
Rickford,
Yes,
I
go ahead.
want to piggyback off of Vinceroy has
I'm
said.
getting a feedback from somebody. Everybody just mute their microphone so that we can hear Amanza. Go ahead, Amanza.
Yes, and that is the unions have to begin to step up and to sound their voices. Public servants that have been so disrespected by this administration can, if they wish, shut this entire place down and make the government listen. Because what are they going to do? Fire everybody? They're going to send home everybody? But the PPPC thrives on fear and instilling fear into the minds and hearts of Guyanese. And if we understand that if the public servants sit down home for 2 days, that is it, we will understand and we will see the PPPC come to their knees and begin to listen to the voices of the people and govern this country in a manner that is befitting our people. But we continue to be divided, and a house divided will not stand. And so I am encouraging public servants to get on your unions and ask them, what are you doing to protest this bill? We have gone past letter writing. We have gone past, I'm talking about it. It's time for people to start walking the walk. The power belongs to the people of Guyana. I am an appointed representative, and I am there because of the people. I'm not there because of my own volition.
You're an elected representative.
I am an elected representative. Where are the unions? Where are the public service? Where are the public servants? You believe if all the teachers decide them turning out to work on the first day of school, what is Priya Manikchan going to do? Send home all of the teachers? What is she going to do? I mean, let us be realistic about it. Patrick Yard and all of them have been sitting on their laurels, and they have been allowing it. Labor has always been a force to be reckoned with. Mark Light and all of them at the GTUs, he need to be brought to heel on this matter, man. It is about time. It is about time that we have Guyanese from all walks of life legitimately protesting. The right to assemble is a right guaranteed under the Constitution. And we must make our voices heard. And then come and tell these tribunals about COVID when the president is hosting all kind of parties in Main Street to distract us whilst they pillage and plunder the treasury. People of Guyana, we have to wake up. We have to arise from the sleep and the slumber. Thanks,
Amanda. As we wrap up, Elson, I want to come back to you as the technical guy here when it comes to the economics and fiscal management. We know that the PUP has a history of thievery. They have always had kleptocracies. Dr. Clive Thomas did a study that matched what the the World Bank said, that about during the 23 years of PUP, we had about $5 billion, and the country lost about $5 billion to corruption. Now, Dr. Thomas did a study that showed that between 2001 and 2008, Guyana, that's when the PUP was in power, Guyana lost $945 billion to corruption, which is $1 billion to corruption. Just those years, those 7 years, 2001 to 2008. And from that money alone, $140 million US dollars, the country lost through procurement fraud, which is the word of contracts, kickbacks and bribery and all of that, to fraud. Then he did another study between 2010 and 2012, and he discovered that Guyana lost $90 billion, Guyana dollars, to corruption, 446 million US dollars. That can build hospitals all over the country for the people. Now, with this kind of history with the PPP, can you explain to the people why the outrage by the members of parliament, why they should be outraged? Because there are no guardrails of accountability, while the PPP is running with a provision in this legislation that they have the right to withdraw every single cent from the fund and $1.7 billion thereafter. So if you have no accountability, you have no technical team managing the macroeconomic effects of whatever they're doing and how harmful it could be to the economy of the country, should Guyanese really be concerned? And should we have this level of calm, or we should see protests the level of Venezuela and Guyana? That's the political part of the question, but go ahead.
No, I think we do need to see protests. I agree that the unions do need to come out and to help with those protests. I gave an example in Venezuela when things are bad. What they do is they bang pots and pans at the back of their houses in the evenings. So maybe we should be doing that. But we don't have a public procurement commission in force right now, which is a constitutional body that's supposed to look at procurement. So you're talking about a lot of corruption that comes from procurement, and we don't have that committee in place. So that is a really big concern, especially given that huge contracts have been awarded so far. But one of the things that I like, because sometimes these numbers can maybe not feel tangible and people don't maybe understand. One of the things I think that simple citizens can simply look at to question for themselves what they're seeing is, you can ask yourself whether you think this is corruption or not. But can we really name any major infrastructure project on the PUP that was not mired in controversy around corruption, around some scandal, that was completed well and that people were comfortable with? I mean, you can't really name anything. And they were there for 23 years. So you mean to tell me you're there for 23 years and we can't name anything where people are really comfortable with what happened and there's no questions that are lingering around the projects? There are questions around Marriott. There are questions around Skeldon, which never worked. There's questions around Amalia Falls. There's endless Barby's Bridge, serious questions there. There's all these examples where there are some serious concerns and where this question is, should these projects have cost what they cost? I mean, remember Amalia's cost ballooned way beyond belief. Now, when you look at the Gas to Shore project, that is a project that has taken so many forms, and the costs of that project have gone through the roof to such an extent that we're now wondering what it will eventually even look like. And in the midst of all of this, there's still no gas utilization master plan, the plan as to how we're going to use this gas. So we're putting together all of these proposals to build this and to build that, but we don't have an actual physical document that says how we intend to use the gas. That sounds to me like it could easily end up as a huge corrupt scheme. So we have to have a close eye on these types of things. And how is this Gas to Shore project going to be funded? Isn't it going to be from these oil and gas revenues? So we've got right in front of our eyes something that potentially is the next Amalia, where just as Amalia started ballooning in costs, this Gas to Shore project is starting to balloon in costs, where we're starting to see the project transform from this to that, seemingly on the whims of the day, without a gas plan, how we're going to use this gas, without a concrete plan. In Trinidad, they have a plan that's over 700 pages long. We don't have a plan. They have a substantial plan because it is needed, and we're investing all of these funds. That's a huge red flag. We have to really anticipate that there might be some trouble with this Gas to Shore project. Looking at the history, looking at the circumstances, it smells like trouble. So this is why I want citizens to understand on a concrete level. The use of these oil and gas revenues will affect your everyday life. That Gas to Shore project, if it encounters delays, if it never fully functions, that will mean, in part at least, that GPL will still not be functioning way down the line, that you'll never get proper electricity. And this is something that we complain about every day in Guyana because blackouts seem to be nonstop. And so is this really the country that we're going to live in? We're going to have oil, but because of high levels of corruption, we're never really going to see the benefits of that oil, and we'll end up living the same life that we're living now. That's not acceptable, and we must reject that outright. We must call for much better than that. And I can tell you one of the things that was going to be evaluated by all of these safeguards that they're trying to remove is the performance of investments in that same Gas to Shore project. I'm sure that would have been evaluated. Now, there's no real mechanism to evaluate it. And so it could end up easily the way that Skeldon went, never really functioning, and us having the same electricity problems that we've had all along, despite spending huge sums. Remember, we spent money on Amalia. We tried to build a road. The road was never properly built, and the whole project collapsed around our ears. Do we want that again? Because we're heading in that direction. And that's why Guyanese need to stand up and say this is not acceptable, and we will not have another Amalia Falls.
Thank you. As we wrap up, let me come to each one of you, starting with Dinesh War, for closing comments. Where do we go from here, Dinesh War? Could you unmute?
Yeah, thank you very much. I would say that we will continue to do whatever it takes to ensure that We represent the cause of the people. Whatever the speaker wants to call us, that is his right. He has a right for his word and his speech. Let it be. But if he continues to repeat that, then we can fit into his category, and we can, become. We can become how he categorize us, and then it will be,
I like
a
that.
different.
I like that. Vinceroy came close to saying that, but you said it. Thank you. I like that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And the thing is that we have had enough in this country. We do not want our children and grandchildren future to be trampled upon. We do not want the PPP to continue to do what they are bent on. And I must reiterate, we had Prouderville 1 under PPP, we had Prouderville 2 under PPP, we had the Berbice Bridge under PPP. All these were designed to make us poorer in this country. I am saying that for 2021, the PPP has been an incomplete organization in providing services to the people. They are still incomplete with the cash grant. They are still incomplete with the flood relief. They are still incomplete with the severance, third severance to the Gaisuku. They are still incomplete to make something happen tangible at Gaisuku. They are still incomplete with the 50,000 jobs they promised, and we can go on and on. So they have brought to us a set of incomplete activities, and we know that they cannot literally complete anything for the betterment of this country. Elson made it clear we cannot name one project that the PPP did or completed without fraud or without questionable acts as it relates to mismanagement of public funds. So I am saying that whatever they want to call us, I don't have a problem with that. My duty is to represent the cause of the people. And in closing, I want to say I am very happy to know that within a matter of 2 weeks, the Guyanese people could have mobilized themselves to speak out on what the PPP is doing. This is sending a message to the PPP, and they are very much afraid of it. Some of the persons who are, with them, claiming to be guardians of democracy, and we see so many of these individuals now standing up to them. They are very much afraid. That is why they will want to brand us, to send a missive there to the population that we are this kind and whatever. But we are saying to them that you are very much afraid of the unity of this country. The PPP is afraid of the unity of the PNC and the AFC and all those civil societies and individuals and organizations. They are afraid. That is why they will try their utmost to grab hold of this money and spend it on their support base. So Guyanese, start to think for yourself. Amanza made a statement a few months ago. We got to become right-thinking citizens. We got to come out of the slumber. We got to start to think for ourselves and stop listening to the propaganda. Think about your children. Do we want Guyana to be like a Venezuela? The answer lies in the hands of the population. You got to do whatever you got to do. Speak out now. But if we do not do that, then our children and grandchildren will suffer in this dear land. Thank you.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you very much. Let me go to Vinceroy. Closing remarks. Where do we go from here?
Well, Rickford, where do we go from here? As Dinesh said, that we will continue to do whatever it takes to ensure that we stand to defend the rights of all Guyanese. We will ensure that we meet with the people of the various communities across this country. We will mobilize our people, Rickford, and keep them informed so that when it is necessary for Guyanese to act as one people, for Guyanese to stand up to support the just cause of ensuring that we are not trampled upon and that the PPP does not try to steal what belongs to all Guyanese, that we will be able to do just what we have to do at that time. Further to that, Rickford, the PPP is no good for Guyana. And so also going from here, is to ensure that as the new year comes, the PPP gets out of office in the shortest possible time. And I don't say that lightly, Rickford, because every day that the PPP remains in office, it is further damage to Guyanese and to this nation as a whole. And so we cannot afford another 365 days rather of damage. It will only cause us more heartaches and harm as a nation. And so we have to ensure that as the new year comes, we work tirelessly to get rid of this installed regime and to ensure that the coalition return to office. And I say this, that the coalition is the only hope for Guyana at this time. And so I want to say to Guyanese, let us remember, celebrate tomorrow, Old Year's and New Year's. But hard work comes after those days because Guyana is in serious trouble under the PPPC.
Thank you very much, Elson.
Thank you, thank you. So I think ultimately what is always important for, or I always try to stress with citizens, is that you must ask why. Why was there a rush to pass this bill? Why was there so much focus on passing it that we're willing to overturn a lot of the parliamentary practices that have existed for so long? Why was it that civil society was not listened to? Why is it that despite the calls from people who are not just coalition supporters but across the board, these calls were not listened to? Why is this? You know, I would even ask an interesting question: if PPP thinks that the law has been passed and that those funds are now available, have those funds been spent? You know, that's a question that I would ask. So I want Guyanese to really sit down and think to themselves, something is wrong here. Recognize this gravity of the situation, and remember that ultimately we're all here trying to benefit the country, and we see examples of how this could go wrong. So ask why. Don't just let this pass you by. Ask these questions. And the following thing is to mobilize. Speak out, join protests, press union leaders, as MP Amanza would have said, and try to get as much energy around this issue as we can before the PPP is able to try and pass this bill again. Because ultimately, this is perhaps the most important piece of legislation that we've seen in Guyana in the last 50 years, and it will certainly govern much of the next 50 years for Guyana. So this is one of the most important fights we will ever engage in. So I want Guyanese to really look deeply and ask themselves whether this is acceptable to them and whether the dangers that we've outlined today, where we could end up really in a wrecked economy and in real misery, are worth us steamrolling and pushing through legislation that is incredibly risky. So that's the message that I want to put out to Guyanese, and thanks again.
Thank you very much. Finally, Amanza.
Rickford, I'm wondering whether
I'm hearing crickets. Could you guys all mute your mic so that we can hear Amanza? Thanks.
Right. No, I'm saying that as Guyanese, we have to resolve that we deserve better. We have to resolve that it must not be that we need to travel to distant lands to experience certain things. We have to resolve that we are worthy of respect, that we are worthy of, for example, a 24-hour electricity supply without interruption, that we are worthy of clean, potable water, that we are worthy to walk on the streets and feel safe. We have to decide as a people that we are worthy. And when we decide that, we will decide that we will not settle for less. As a people, our waking reality got to be proper infrastructure. It has to be the equitable distribution of wealth, of opportunities. That is what we deserve as a people. And I want to say to those who believe that because their needs are being met temporarily, that this will not touch them, you are mistaken. When you create a society of have and have nots, you are making yourself vulnerable. The best way for Guyana to move forward is for the equitable distribution of wealth, the equitable distribution of opportunities, the equitable distribution of the nation's patrimony. We as a people have to stop thinking that because it doesn't touch and concern me, that I shouldn't be bothered by it. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown that we are far more interconnected than we ever thought. What makes us think that if Guyana descends into anarchy and chaos, that it will not bother us? Rickford, I will call on us as this year ends to engage in some deep introspection and to determine whether as Guyanese, we are going to live as second-class citizens in our own country, or whether we will rise up and decide that enough is enough. Vinceroy and Dinesh will tell you that in the National Assembly, all of us were threatened. Our safety was threatened. We were threatened with jail. We were threatened with whatsoever. What was done to Winston Jordan, our time will soon come. Our lives were threatened in the vilest of manners by people on the PPPC side of the house. Notwithstanding, we stood resolutely, and we will continue to so do, because we have decided that we will no longer live on our knees. And let me say this to Guyanese: the time for the blame game has passed. The same energy that you take to say this is this body fault, that is your fault, is you get here, is the exact energy that you need to decide that you will lift yourself up from the circumstance in which you find yourself. So we have to use our energies in the right direction, and we have to focus. We have to focus. It will take courage, but we are a courageous people. Our history is one of courage. Look at it. Barbados recently shed off the Court of Appeal. We made those steps since 1970. We have been trailblazers. But as a people, we have allowed ourselves to become cowed and bowed by oppressors and by the oppression of the PPPC. Well, no more. No more. And so I call on every Guyanese to get up and stand up, as Brother Bob said. Stand up for your rights. This is your life. This is your children's life. This is your Guyana. You're born here. You understand? Nobody got a right to it more than you. And certainly not the PPPC elite. And I keep making the distinction because I know for a fact that the PPPC supporters are suffering because they come to us and they complain. Because the PPPC is only concerned about their friends and their cronies, and they use their supporters when it is convenient. Guyana belongs to all of us. And she is ours to protect, and she is ours to defend. We have a country next door that believes that Essequibo belongs to them. Let me continue fighting Maki and he and see how. I mean, I can't be using my country songs like this, but fighting Maki, but I hope people understand what I mean. We
We
cannot
understand. We know what you mean.
fight each other because it makes us weaker and it makes us vulnerable. We have an existential threat on our western border. We have people who are influxing into this country every day that believe that Essequibo is them own. A son of Essequibo is a son of Venezuela. Meanwhile, we down here fighting Matty. And they're setting up homesteads. They're setting up settlements in our Essequibo. The PPPC don't care about that. They just want to get the hands on the oil money. So we're gonna put them against each other. We can make them call each other racist. We can do all kind of thing. Meanwhile, when it collapses, because all of them have property in Miami, who got property here, and so they will simply pick themselves up and their family and exit. And we're going to be left here in the sauce. This is serious, my people. This is serious. Time for play done. Thank you, Rickford.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, what a program. The feedback is great. Everybody enjoyed the commentary, the expert comments. Everybody, thanks you guys for the work that you're doing in Parliament. Elson, even though you're not in Parliament, I know you're getting there. You're heading right there. Don't worry. Next go round, you'll be right there.
I agree. I keep telling him this.
Great, good. Thanks to you all. And as we close out the new year, thank you guys for always being available. Thank you for the work you do on behalf of the people. On behalf of the people, I want to thank you guys, all of you. I want to wish you guys continued success and prosperity and good health in 2022. Good health, that's very important. Good mental health and good physical health. You guys need it as leaders of the country. So thank you guys all. And to the viewers, as I close out, this is the last program for the year. Thank you guys for being so faithful. Thank you guys for keeping up with us when we start late. Thank you guys for keeping up with us when we end late. It has been such a pleasure bringing you guys information and this interactive program so many times this year. And I look forward to improving the service and providing you more information and helping to work together to bring us together as a nation so that we can enjoy the benefits of the patrimony of the country and that we could enjoy a democracy which we have to fight to keep because we're approaching tyranny and a dictatorship, which we must all rise up and fight against. So as we go into the new year, I want to wish everybody well. You guys stay safe. We've lost so many people in 2021. I live in the vicinity of 4 hospitals, as I said. And in New York here, we've lost about 58,000 people in the state of New York. And during the surge in COVID, I've heard about 200 ambulances every hour or two rushing patients to emergency rooms, most of whom did not make it. Well, we did, and we have to give God thanks. So as we close out this new year, let's thank God for his mercy. Let's thank God for sparing our lives, and let's give him praise and continue to serve him. He will protect us. I wish you all well for 2022. Continue to be progressive, continue to be prosperous, continue to be successful, and continue to be healthy. Good night, everybody.